Just stick with us. Don't believe the crap you see from these people, the fake news. And just remember, what you're seeing and what you're reading is not what's happening.
Trump did not invent the alternate reality machine that exists on the right, but he's used the megaphone of the presidency to expand and legitimize it, prompting warnings of creeping authoritarianism or worse. Joining me now to discuss where we are, Yale University professor Jason Stanley, author of the book How Fascism Works. Also with me, New York University professor Ruth Ben-Ghat, whose forthcoming book is Strongmen: How They Rise, Why They Succeed, and How They Fail, and Jelani Cobb, a professor at Columbia University School of Journalism and a staff writer at The New Yorker. So let me start with you, Ruth. I mean, at one level, I feel torn when the president goes for one of these like Twitter jags in which he's retweeting all kinds of people. Because at one level, it feels like small and kind of almost like impotent and trivial, right? That here's this guy with all this power, and what he's doing is retweeting, for instance, Howard H. with 92 followers, who's mad that Andrew Napolitano is saying mean things about the president. But when I read someone like you or some of the people at this table, you see it as something much more menacing and darker. And why?
Well, always look at the end. Always look for the end game, and always ask, why is he doing this? And tweeting people who, it's not random people who have no followers. It's usually some extremists or neo-Nazis or people who have already tweeted violent videos against the press and Islamophobic things. So that actually builds this populist profile that even the little person can feel heard by the president. But there's always, a bigger logic in what he's doing, and he's really he's a marketing master. He's very dangerous because he knows exactly how to communicate, and the principles of propaganda are saturation, repetition, and he's done that very effectively for a few years now, and we're seeing the effects.
So he's breaking down factuality. Like, the goal is to break down any kind of connection to reality and create this us-them narrative whereby by tweeting really out there conspiracy theories, like Wild, the Islamophobic conspiracy theory he tweeted right before, basically on the eve of Ramadan. He's trying to introduce into public discourse stories that detach us from reality.
Right.
And I think there's another point to this, too, which is that when you look at the way authoritarians tend to function, they anthropomorphize the state. They have the state take over the most quirky, oddball aspects of their character, things that people would never care about.
Right.
But, there's Gaddafi with his ode to Condoleezza Rice, right. Or there's the weird things about Saddam Hussein, or these kind of individuals who have these strange personality attributes that somehow or another become aspects of the state's actual day-to-day existence. So we're having to deal with questions that should never rise to the level of national conversation.
That's one of the tyrannies, right, of living in a state that is run by a strongman, is that their bizarre idiosyncrasies and character traits filter down through the state in all kinds of ways that you then have to deal with as just a subject.
Right. And another mechanism is that, and I've seen it with Berlusconi when I was living in Rome when they brought the neo-fascists to power. I've seen it over and over again. The fringe people, the extremist people who had no power, who are, again, lunatics, conspiracy theories, they actually get into the mainstream, and there's no better legitimator than the President of the United States. So we're seeing a very concentrated and dangerous form of this process that's been repeated for 100 years with other dictators.
And that's the key to breaking down any sense of reality. You break down the mainstream media as an authority source. You go after the universities. You say, they're not allowing free speech since they don't allow these nutball conspiracy theories in. This is what Trump did with birtherism.
Right, but there's a bark and bite question always with this, right? Because he always is sort of fundamentally, I think, like bigger bark than bite, and more likes to talk a lot of trash and doesn't like to actually throw punches. He's just, that is who he is. And so, yeah, he'll rail against, I mean, to me, it's like you guys are ascribing an intentionality to me, which is like, to me, it's like he isn't that different from Howard H., who has 92 followers. He's retweeting him because he's like identifies with Howard H., and the two of them both watch Fox News and are mad at Andrew Napolitano.
But they're the guys who are going to act on his behalf.
Right.
And so we see,
that's the worst.
And he does not denounce them.
Right, and he does not denounce them. It's a kind of tacit endorsement. And it's like, because we say that people can be damned by faint praise. It can work on the opposite too. They can be praised by faint damnation. So when you give these kind of half-hearted denunciations of things, what it actually does is encourage more of the same.
Hannah Arendt discusses this. She says, you don't denounce the unofficial vigilante violence. You don't praise it, you just let it go,
right.
And so therefore sanction it.
Right.
So these materials, and I don't think this is innocent. We don't know. It's making.
Oh, I don't think it's innocent.
Right.
I don't want to be clear about that.
No,
I think it's malicious and nefarious. I just don't know how powerful it is.
It's making the
yeah.
information sphere into spectacle.
Yeah, but it's also, he signaled what authoritarians do, and they start this when they're still on the campaign trail. When he did that quote where in January 2016 he said, I could stand on Fifth Avenue and shoot someone.
Right. Yeah, we played it in the A block today.
I saw that. Yeah. He was being very intentional. He was giving Americans a message that he could be violent, that he would connect himself to violent people, and that he figured he was above the law. Because it wasn't just that he was going to shoot someone, it was also he'd have no consequences.
Right. There was this, the Falwell retweet where he sort of, he makes this dumb joke about reparations, and the president, Trump should have 2 years added to his first term as payback for time stolen by the corrupt failed coup. There's all this coup talk, and now there's this sort of like floating the idea, running up the flagpole, like maybe the president gets 2 extra years.
Erdogan, or we could just kind of go. How many dictatorial heads of state have we seen who haven't claimed that there was an attempt for a coup?
Right.
It's in the textbook. It's kind of like.
Although
page
Erdogan
one.
really did have a coup. Just
yeah, I mean, we did, but still, you start with page 1, where you have to kind of empower your enemies and place them in a position of where they pose much more jeopardy than they actually do.
Mm-hmm. How much? The stabbed in the back. Sort of story, right? Which is both sort of broadly cultural, but also specific to like the security services, right? The FBI.
Yeah.
Right.
Here you have the head of this is Ron Romney, like the head of the RNC, the establishment RNC, saying that Comey's FBI sent undercover agents to spy on Donald Trump. Stunning revelation, the lengths the Obama administration went to. Instead of a phony Russia collusion investigation, we actually need to investigate how this whole hoax started.
Well, this is a structure. This is a structure familiar from anti-Semitic conspiracy theories.
Right.
That there's a secret global conspiracy of all powerful agents. And of course, that licenses then the kind of violence that you see, because there is this connection between an all-powerful link of media and deep state behind, well, who's the ones arranging it?
And it's also, it's very important, all of these right-wing leaders over 100 years have had to pose as victims. So victims of the deep state, victims of witch hunts, and Berlusconi, Erdogan, and Trump have used the word, the term witch hunt a lot. And I even found in my research for my book on strongmen, a poster from the late 20s of Hitler with his mouth taped up, like with duct tape. And he's saying, the caption is like, I'm translating roughly, but of all the millions of people in the world, I'm the only person who's a taboo. And it was because he had, there were speaking bans on him in the late 20s, and they were done at the local level. And he convinced them in the right before the Depression hit, he convinced some of these places to lift the speaking bans because he said he would work within the law. So this right-wing whining about being victims,
deplatforming,
is really old.
The original deplatforming, although there probably goes back further than that. Jason Stanley, Ruth Ben-Ghiat, and Jelani Cobb, thank you all for being with me.
Thank you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.